Good evening. Good evening, Betty.
Good evening, Swamiji.
Pranam Maharaj.
Good evening, Swami.
Good evening, Swami.
Good evening.
Good evening, Noel.
Good evening,
Pranam
Swamiji.
Maharaj.
Good evening, everybody. Yes.
Good evening, Swami.
How is the weather now in Thailand?
It's hot.
Quite good.
But yeah, it's a little hot, but not very hot. It's nice. Breezy as well. It rains. Off and
Oh,
on it rains.
I
Yeah.
don't know why I can't hear. What is wrong with my sound? Just a minute.
It also rains.
Yes, now, yes. How is
So it's
the
both summer as well as it also rains. So
Oh, it's
if
raining.
it's hot, yeah. So if it's hot, it kind of tempers down later in the day. So it's always been a hot weather, so it's fine.
Oh,
Namaste, Swami.
namaste, Vijayaji. Namaste. Good evening, Alexandra. Yes, Alexandra, good evening. Mrs. Mukherjee, good morning. Yes, Noel, good evening. Yes. All right. Nanakji, good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Yes, Barbara, good evening. All right, so, spotlight. First, we shall chant Durga Suktam that we have started learning. A hymn for Mother Durga. Durga Puja is coming, approaching. So it appears in the Veda, and in last class, we chanted the first stanza. So what we shall do today, we shall chant the first stanza again and again, then read the translation of the second stanza and chant second stanza. All right. Durga Suktam, right. So again today we shall do first call and response, then together. Okay, first call and response. Here, listen and repeat. Om Jata Vedase Sunavama. Om Jata Vedase Sunavama. Okay. Soma Maratiyato. Soma Maratiyato. Nidhati Vedaha. Nidhati Vedaha. Sanah Parshadati. Sanah Parshadati. Durgani Vishwa. Durgani Vishwa. Naveva Sindhum. Naveva Sindhum. Duritatyagnihi. Duritatyagnihi. All right. Those who are new, or just to remind everybody that when there is an underline, it means that it will be a lower note. When there is be an horizontal vertical line, it will be upper note. Okay, so there is a transition of notes, ascension and descension. Okay, let's chant together. Om Jata Vedase Sunavama Soma Maratiyato Nidahati Vedaha Sanah Parshadati Durgani Vishwa Naveva Sindhum Duritatyagnihi. All right, now we shall we shall read out the translation of the second stanza. Okay, second stanza, let's read it out together. We offer our oblations to the fire of Durga to cross over this very difficult ocean of worldly existence. To her who is of the color of fire, Agnivarna, and blazing with tapas, tapasa jwalantim, who was born of that fire, Vairo Chinim, and who is worshipped through fruits of actions, karma phalas. To that Durga, to that Devi, I take refuge, Sharanam Aham, by falling at her feet, Prapadye. O Mother Durga, I prostrate before you. Please ferry me mercifully over this ocean of the world, full of great difficulties and perils. So that is the second stanza of the hymn. That is, we are going to chant. Here is one new letter or new formation. If you see Devi, G and M above. So it should be pronounced as Devi Gam. Devi Gam. Okay, this is a Vedic Sanskrit, Devi Gam. All right. So first call and response. Tam Agni Varnam. Tam Agni Varnam. Tapasa Jwalantim. Tapasa Jwalantim. Vairo Chanim. Vairo Chanim. Karma Phaleshu Justa Am. Karma Phaleshu Justa Am. Durgam Devigam. Durgam Devigam. Let's do it again. Durgam Devigam. Durgam Devigam. Sharanamaham Prapadye. Sharanamaham Prapadye. Sutarasi Tarase Namaha. Sutarasi Tarase Namaha. Okay, now let's try to do it together, okay? Tvam Agni Varnam. tapasa jalantim vairochanim karma phale shujustaam durgam devigam sharanamaham prapadye sutarasi tarase namaha. Again. Tamagnivarnam tapasa jalantim vairochanim karma phale shujustaam durgam devigam sharanamaham prapadye sutarasi tarase namaha. Okay, all right. This hymn chanting is not an easy one. Okay, it's not an easy one. So it will take time to get used to this. And the difficulty for me is I am slowing down a lot. So while I am slowing down to chant, it is my natural flow for this hymn is getting obstructed. So I am not right at sometimes. Okay. But we shall get there when we can confidently chant it, as we chanted the peace chants and also that Shiva, Manasa Puja, right? The mental worship of Shiva. All right. All right, now to our text, Narada Bhakti Sutras, Narada's way of divine love. We have read so far up to 34th aphorisms, and we have covered two sections. First section was about nature of divine love. What is bhakti? And there we saw bhakti means para bhakti, that is the goal. When we have spontaneous love, a supreme love, which is different from all other love in quantity as well as in quality. That kind of love. What is the nature of that love that we saw in the first section, aphorisms 1 to 24. Then in the next section, aphorisms 25 to 33, we saw some arguments or some propositions why bhakti is superior to others. That two sections we have seen. Now comes the real question: how to have, how to develop, how to culture that kind of devotion? What are the practices for that devotion? How we can cultivate divine love? What are the practical steps? That is the next section we are going to start from today. Aphorisms. So aphorism number 34. Tasyaha sadhanani gayanti acharyaha. Let us read it together. Tasyaha sadhanani gayanti acharyaha. And the syntax is like this: acharyaha gayanti sadhanani tasyaha. Acharyaha means the great teachers. Gayanti, sing. Sadhanani, the practices. Tasyaha, for bhakti. The great teachers sing the practices for bhakti. The great teachers sing the practices for bhakti. All right. So, great teachers. The word acharya, usually we translate as teachers, okay? But here, not only the teachers in the sense of scholars, okay? Acharya has the root, verbal root of char. Char. Char means to move, to walk. So acharya means those teachers who are not merely scholars, but they have walked the path of bhakti. They have practiced. They have practiced, and now they are sharing with us what are the means of achieving that kind of divine love. So that is the meaning of acharya, those who have practiced. Now, one intriguing word is gayanti. Gayanti means sing, singing, okay? So now these aphorisms could have been badanti. Badanti means say. Instead of badanti, instead of using the word badanti, the aphorism mentions that the great teachers sing. Why? Why? Can you think of why? Why the aphorism mentions that the great teachers sing the practices of bhakti? Instead of saying, the great teachers say. Any idea? More than just stating. Okay. Do you want me to, okay, unmute you? Okay, allow, okay. With more convincing, okay. That's one idea we get, with more convincing, enthusiastic. Good. Any more? Yes, Rose, go ahead.
Out of a love, out of an abundance of love and passion.
Good, 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 very good. Any more?
The highest ideas can be expressed in music better.
More than just stating, out of joy, path of devotion, with more, I think to make it more emotional. Okay, to explain more bhakti, good. All right, see, this is the beauty of the aphorisms, okay, that they give us a chance or opportunity to think of the words and come up with our own ideas, creative ideas, conveys conviction. All right, all of these are good. So the basic point, as it basically what it appears to me is we sing when we are, we sing spontaneously. We sing spontaneously. It's not that when we have to sing, then only we sing. We usually sing spontaneously out of joy. So this aphorism may indicate that the acharyas, the great teachers, out of their joy, they share the practice with others. Okay. The teachers, out of sheer joy, have shared these practices with us. Then sadhanani. Sadhanani means the practices. Somewhere it has been also translated as the means. Okay, means. Sadhana means means. So what we mean is the practices of bhakti. As we shall see, Narada will point out the practices. The practices can be classified into two categories. One is negative, one is positive. Negative in the sense, the practices mentioned in aphorism 35 that we shall see today, aphorism 42, they are more of don't do these things. Try to refrain from these things. This is one set of practices. And other practices are positive things. Try to do these things. Aphorisms 36, 37, 38. Both of them are necessary in the beginning, a harmonious combination of the two is beneficial. Again, it might also depend upon the constitution of the seekers. That is why we find that some of the teachers emphasize the don'ts more to some spiritual seekers, some types of seekers, while the same teachers will emphasize the do's more for other seekers. So depending upon their constitutions. As we advance in our spiritual path, the do's become more important than the don'ts. As Sri Ramakrishna said, the more we progress toward the east, the farther we are from the west. That is, as we progress, do's become more important than the don'ts. But at the beginning, we also need both the don'ts and the do's. All right. That is aphorism 34. Now, aphorism 35. Aphorism 35. Tat tu Vishaya Tyagat Sangha Tyagat Cha. Let's read it together. Tat tu Vishaya Tyagat Sangha Tyagat Cha. And the syntax is like this. Tat tu Vishaya Tyagat Cha Sangha Tyagat. Tat means devotion. Which kind of devotion? That supreme devotion. Tu means is attained by Vishaya Tyagat, letting go of sense objects. Cha and Sangha Tyagat, letting go of attachment for them. So two things, letting go of the sense objects and the subtle one, attachment for them. Devotion is attained by letting go of the sense objects and attachment for them. So this is a very important aphorism. At the beginning, it may feel like a very negative one, world negating. So, okay. So this aphorism mentions two don'ts which are closely associated. Letting go of sense objects and attachment for them. This is what happens is when we enjoy any sense object, for example, an ice cream, it creates an impression, a samskara of pleasure in our mind. I took the ice cream, I felt good. So that impression of pleasure is remain in our mind. That memory of pleasure encourages us to have that pleasant experience again, That is how attachment for it is formed in mind. That attachment creates hankering for the sense object. In any pleasure, more the number of sense organs involved, more intense is the pleasure. If we analyze our pleasures from sense objects, the more sense objects anything can attract or engage, more will be pleasure from that thing or that event. So Vishaya Tyaga is external, externally letting go of the sense objects, sense pleasures. And Sangha Tyaga is internal, internally having a craving for them. Okay, they are mutually dependent. I can abstain from ice cream, I can say no to ice cream, but the hankering may remain. Okay, so they are closely related. One is dependent on the another. So importance of Vishaya Tyaga, importance of letting go of sense objects is this. The more we are exposed to the pleasures of sense objects, more chances of ours to develop attachment for them. If I am exposed to a sense objects and I like it, then there is a chance of having attachment for that, and from that having an hankering or craving for that. That is why Bhishma in Mahabharata, in his deathbed, said something very important. He said, one that is not acquainted with the enjoyment of a certain object never feels a desire for that object. Desires arise from the actual experience of the pleasures that touch or sight or hearing gives. Without doubt, therefore, not to taste, not to see should be the vow of a person if they want happiness. That what is said in Shanti Parva. If I have never tasted a particular ice cream, the desire or attachment for it won't exist in the mind. That is why, they say that we already have so many attachments, so many cravings. Don't acquire new attachments. Don't acquire new attachments, new craving. So keep away from the allurements, from the temptations. So according to Narada, an aspirant for bhakti should let go of the both the sense objects and the attachment for them. Sense objects letting go of, and also the subtle internal craving or liking for them. Okay. Now the question is, why do we let go? Why we need to let go to cultivate bhakti? What is the connection between letting go and bhakti? Again, this is a question open to all of you. What is the connection, do you think, between letting go and bhakti? What is the harm if we indulge in sense pleasures and at the same time we try to love God? Is there any connection at all? What do you think? Is a competing factor. All right, one answer. So one answer, dilute our devotion. Okay, another answer, dilute our devotion. Very good. Putting one, okay, before the, okay, Noel's answer. Putting one before the many. I could not get it. Noel, can you explain more? Maybe by unmuting yourself. Yes. You have to unmute yourself. Yes, Noel, go ahead.
Unmute. I would just say putting God first before anything else.
Okay, I see. Good. Okay. One pointed focus comes. Okay. Feeling freedom. Okay. Sense objects distract. Good. It interferes with attempt. Good. If thinking only of myself, I don't pay attention to God. All of these are very good answers and all of them are true. So for your convenience, what I have done, I have, of course you will get in the note, cannot serve God, and yes, desires are less that allow us to get devotion. One cannot serve God and mammon. Desires are less that allow us to get devotion. Good. So yes, all of them can be, can be arranged in what I have done is 9 arguments for that. Okay. So put before you, all of you can find your opinion in this, probably in these 9 ones. So as we see that in Aphorism 19, Narada said, what is ideal devotion? Ideal devotion is constant remembrance of God and an agony if in forgetting God. That is, Narada gave the example of the benchmark of God, devotion, remembering God all the time. So the more we are engaged with the sense objects, the less we are engaged with God, for sure. Right? Because we have only limited time. We cannot do multitasking. Secondly, engagement with sense objects steal our energy. Not only physical energy, but psychic energy. Since we don't have infinite supply of psychic energy, we are left with less psychic energy for spiritual practices. Third is, attraction for sense objects is natural to us. We don't have to do anything about that. It is natural. We are habituated in that. Sense objects grab our attention. And to develop our bhakti, we need to focus our attention uninterruptedly towards God. And we see that when we sit for meditation, the objects which we are most attached to, they will show up during meditation. And less is the number and intensity of our attachments, better we see our meditation. So they are sense objects really, or the hankering for sense objects, the pleasures of the sense objects distract us. Fourth, meditation on God, more than techniques, is a movement of our will toward a higher reality called God. Unless pleasure seeking is restrained to some extent, it is difficult to let our awareness move in that higher direction. So mysteriously, or we don't know why, if we have so much of liking for sense pleasures, we find it difficult to pull the mind towards, pull it up, give it an upward turn towards God. According to Yoga Sutras, every sense pleasure leaves an impression in our mind. Stronger is our the stronger the likes, stronger the impressions. For bhakti, we need samskaras or impressions which are centered in God. Other samskaras, other impressions interfere with bhakti samskaras. That is why we need to take care of that. Number 6, minimalist lifestyle is advisable for a spiritual seeker. We hardly see any person living amidst opulence to be a great devotee. Hardly we see. One enjoying all kind of sense pleasures and relishing it so much, and at the same time having any spiritual motive too. If there is, they are more of an exception than the rule, like King Janaka, that we know that although the king, he was the king, and amidst all these kind of engagements, at the same time, he was a great devotee, great jnani. But that is a very advanced stage. The 7th, I think this is the most important thing and very subtle thing to understand. This reason is metaphysical reason. Metaphysical reason is this, that God is paramarthika satya, that is absolute transcendental reality. And the worldly objects, the world is vyavaharika satya. That is, they have transactional reality. We need them for transactions, for day-to-day living. If we give too much value, when we are giving too much value to sense objects, it means we are assigning absolute reality to them. We are, for the time being, forgetting that they are temporary things. They are impermanent things. They are not ultimate reality. And that takes us away from the paramarthika reality, the transcendental absolute reality. So this is, I think, the philosophy behind why we should give less importance to sense objects. If we look around, we see, and look deeply enough, we see that not only in spiritual life, but also in every sphere of our society, every sphere of social well-being, we can trace the values to one great value called letting go. Letting go seems to be solution of all the problems. And opposite to that letting go, opposite to that, greed or desire to have more, these are the root of all the problems. For example, take climate change. All we know now what we need to do, but greed of handful of people, a group of people, is holding us back. Then if we see news every day that some of the countries, poorest countries, appalling conditions of the people there. And who are responsible there? Only a few handful of people at the top of the society who have excessive greed. Excessive greed for what? Money. Money itself is not the reason of greed. What money can bring? What money can bring? Sense objects, pleasure of sense objects. So not only as it's so also in spiritual life, value of letting go. Ninth, this is about attachment, sangatyaga. Attachments blur our vision. With blurred vision, we cannot see the reality. For example, if I have excessive attachment to any ideology, then I will be blind to other aspects of the reality. And that is why we see so much of fight over ideologies, but none of them are ready to see other points of view. They are so much attached to their particular ideology. In the same way, attachment to sense pleasures also blur our vision for the transcendental reality. And attachment is the root cause. They say, Yoga Vasishta says clearly, Sage Vasishta replying to Rama, the problem of meditation. So Vasishta says clearly that the disturbances in meditation is directly proportional to your attachment to things. Less you have attachments for worldly things, more you will be able to, better you will be able to meditate on God. So these are 9 reasons why in every faith tradition they tell us to be moderate about our indulgence with the sense pleasures. The same way, bhakti is also no exception. If we want to cultivate our love for God, then we have to be moderate about our indulgence with sense pleasures, and more importantly, having subtle desire, subtle liking, not only liking, strong liking for those sense objects. These are obstruction for bhakti. Now the question is, what does it mean to our day-to-day life? Can we avoid sense objects at all? Can we, without the engagement or contacts with sense objects, can we live? No, we cannot. What we can do is to know. That is why we are studying this kind of books, texts, so that we can know, remind ourselves the limits of sense objects and their pleasures. We should learn to see the sense objects in proper perspective. We love sense objects because we feel that they are pleasurable. This in Sanskrit is called Shobhana Adhyasa, superimposing beauty or goodness or value to things which themselves are neutral. So we assign values that is good, that is pleasurable, that is so good to have. It is a subjective phenomenon. Otherwise, if this goodness or pleasure was inherent in every sense object, then everybody would have loved everything. Everybody would have loved the same sense objects, but we know that all of us don't love the same things. So it is we ourselves are giving or projecting value or likability in things, in sense objects. We are creating this hankering or attachment. So even when we are enjoying the sense objects of the world, at the back of our mind, we should have the idea that sense objects have their limits. One limit is they are temporary. They are not going to last forever, or they are not going to give me joy forever. Second one is to recognize the fact that the promised pleasure is mixed with pain. The promised pleasure is mixed with pain. That is the name of sense objects in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is Vishaya. So which is painful. Painful in acquiring, pain while enjoying, in the sense that they are creating attachment in our mind for our future bondage, and also pain in losing them. So to acquire sense objects, we need to exert our effort. And when we are enjoying them, when they are feeling pleasant to us, what is happening is impressions, pleasant impressions is created in our mind, which will in future goad us to have more and more of that. And also there is pain in losing them. That's why Yoga Sutra, chapter 2, 15th aphorism says that Dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha. To a discerning person, every sense object, every sensual pleasure is a source of pain. It is not a pessimistic view of the world. Some might think it's a very pessimistic view of the world, but to a discerning person, which is pleasurable to all of us, they can see through it and they can see where the pain is. So trying to remind ourselves with the faults. What is the fault? What are the faults? The faults in sense objects are, they are temporary and their pleasure is mixed with pain. This is the antidote for Shobhana Adhyasa. We try to apparently we are caught up in their likability. We love it. But for a viveki, a discerning spiritual seeker, they should stop and pause and think about the consequences. This practice is called dosha darshanam. See through the faults in sense pleasures. If we can do that, then we shall have, the logical part of our mind will say, no, it is not actually so pleasurable that you are thinking. If we can do that, we won't be too much attracted to any sense object. Too much is the important. Even though we cannot avoid them, but adhyasa means superimposition, right? Even though we cannot avoid the sense objects, but we will not be too much attached to them. Presently, we should remember, these points are more important now than ever, because we are now living in a consumeristic society. We are encouraged to acquire new and new things, even if we don't need them. And commercials create an artificial need in our mind. And that is the philosophy of the commercials, of consumerism, that create a need, create an artificial need in the mind of the audience, in the viewers, potential customers. They make us feel that we are not complete without these objects. But at those moments, if we can remain alert, we can avoid the trap of consumerism. Then we should ask ourselves very often when we feel tempted, do we really need them? Do we really need the updates? I have a phone and now they are showing that updates, the next version is available. Do we really need that? So this kind of questions can bring us to our senses. Then other thing I find that as attachment is not good, so also aversion from them. That is, I don't want to see, I don't want to look at that product at all. So can we, this is a challenge. And if we can do this, wonderful. Can we learn to appreciate a new product, a new gadget, a new car, new object, without feeling the need of acquiring them? We see a new project and let us just appreciate what it is for. But at the same time, telling ourselves, I am just appreciating it. I really don't need it. Can we do that? That will be a great thing. Then letting go of sense objects come in degrees. Okay, in degrees. We should practice it according to our capacity, according to our need, according to our capacity. One practical tips is we should try to practice not having strong liking for anything. Strong liking is the word. Liking is fine. Strong liking is bondage. So also strong disliking, that is also a bondage. So this is more doable thing, avoiding strong liking and strong disliking for anything. If we see that many of our sufferings, pains, and misery is due to one of these two problems, strong liking for something or strong disliking for something. When we are sufficiently advanced, we don't need letting go of sense objects anymore. We are already then established in detachment. Our attraction for sense objects have already been then replaced by attraction for God. But until then, we need to restrain our mind to some extent if we want to develop or grow in the path of bhakti. The one good thing about this restraint is, one immediate gain is, when the mind is restrained from sense pleasures, we develop a different kind of energy, a different kind of psychic energy. And there is a great joy in that, joy of restraint. In Sanskrit, there is a word for that. This joy is called shama sukha. Sukha means joy, coming from shama. Shama means restraint. Restraint. A joy also comes from restraint. That is a sattvika joy, a very subtle, higher kind of joy, which is not dependent on anything external. Now the question is, are these two practices enough for devotion? If I can let go of sense objects and attraction or attachment for them, no, not at all. These are the negative things. But now we need positive practices for directing our mind toward God. Narada will speak about those practices in the next few aphorisms that we shall see in our next class. So summary of aphorism 35 is, too much sense enjoyment and attraction for sense pleasure are obstructions for directing our mind toward God. An aspirant bhakta should practice restraining these two tendencies so that they can let their awareness, their mind, their emotion flow uninterruptedly toward God. Pleasure born of contacts are wounds of pain. Yes, it is from Bhagavad Gita, right? Bhagavad Gita. Na teshu ramate buddhaha, right? Adi antavanta. Because they have a beginning, they have an end. That's why the wise do not indulge in them. So, any question? Any question? Any thought? Okay, Manish Chakravarti. How can one judge that they are making progress in controlling the senses? That is, giving up foods one likes. How one can judge that? That is, the progress can be understood in the sense when I cannot have that object, how much suffering I am having, you know? If I like it so much and now it is not available for me, how comfortable I am without that thing. That shows how much we are attached to that object. Okay, so the same, strength of addiction is how comfortable we are without that object of addiction or substance of addiction. Similarly, the strength of our attachment will be revealed by how comfortable we are without that thing, that particular thing. From that, we can measure our progress. The faculty developed by sense control is medha. Yes, medha. Yes. Medha is a subtle wisdom which comes from, living a moderate life. A moderate life. It is not IQ, it is not EQ, it is not, any other kind of intelligence. It's a different type of intelligence that we get from practicing or living a moderate life, a discerning self, and different types of wisdom. All right. So next time we shall see the positive practices, Narada. And by the way, Narada is now calling from the practices that have been prescribed by the previous acharyas. It is not Narada's. Narada is not telling that these are the practices I am telling. He is just, compiling the gist of the practices what other teachers had already told. Okay, so we shall do the guided meditation, and before that I shall take a 1 minute break. Okay, you may also take a break and drink some water.